Salem, Massachusetts, a town forever linked to a series of events that continue to fascinate the nation more than 320 years later. The Witch Trials. Movies, plays, novels, and TV shows have drawn inspiration from the Salem Witch Trials, including Arthur Miller's 1953 classic, The Crucible.
Now, a new book, The Witches, Salem 1692, helps separate fact from fiction. And here on this Halloween to talk about it is Pulitzer Prize winning author Stacy Schiff. Stacy, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This is obviously a haunting story because we still talk about it all these years later. But as Jerika mentioned, I think a lot of people think the facts were in The Crucible by Arthur Miller or in Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter. How close to the truth are those stories?
I think we've taken away this idea that it was an incident perpetrated by men on women. In fact, there are male victims, including a minister. We have this idea that we burned the witches when in fact we hanged the witches. And the whole thing takes place very quickly. It's 9 months of 1692 from beginning to end. So it's this sort of galloping force with which this delusion envelopes Massachusetts.
You've written about some giants in history, from Ben Franklin to Cleopatra. Why take on Salem?
You know, it seems to me something we go back to over and over, which is partly because we can't seem to unravel the riddle at the heart of it. It's really seminal. I mean, it echoes so much throughout our history, both in terms of the fear and in terms of that sort of apocalyptic, paranoid strain of thinking.
And what is at the heart of it?
Wow, the politics of fear, I guess, in part. Faith, in large part. The reason to believe in witchcraft, which the 17th century New Englander did, was part and parcel of religion. And he takes his religion so seriously that he needs to prosecute witchcraft.
You write, and I love what you say here, in isolated settlements, in dim, smoky, firelit homes, New Englanders lived very much in the dark, where one listens more acutely, feels most passionately, imagines most vividly, where the sacred and the occult thrive.
The darkness seemed to me to be a character in the story, in a way, partly because, you know, that smudge on the wall can so easily turn into something else. And when you believe in witchcraft, and people have confessed that they are, in fact, witches, it's very hard not to believe that some sort of conspiracy is afoot, which is what happens here.
Describe what these trials were actually like. We've heard a lot about the Hollywood versions, but what were they actually like? As you mentioned, people were hanged, not burned.
You know, it's interesting. A 17th century trial, which is done according to due process at the time, is a very raucous, unruly affair. And it's really interesting. You get court reporters saying they couldn't take down testimony because they couldn't hear, because there was so much noise in the courtroom.
Right.
People throw things. In one hearing, a woman throws her shoe at one of the suspects. Hearsay is acceptable, and innocent until proven guilty is still many years in the future. So it's a relatively cut and dried affair.
One of the other interesting things you point out is that this is a community that actually kept extensive records. But there's a lot missing, actually, about these 9 months.
This is the bane of the historian's existence. These people are maniacal record keepers, except when it comes to 1692, about which there's so much shame afterwards and regret that the year almost evaporates in this nearly magical way. It's purged from the record books, from people's letters, from sermons even, and from diaries.
In terms of the research that went into this, 3 years, was this one of the most challenging books that you've written?
You know, it's difficult because, yes, in many ways, you're writing about an event that's fiction or delusional in some way, and you have to make it seem real. So you have to impress upon the reader why this was taken, why these accusations are taken to heart, why they're believed, and then you have to explain why that was crazy. So it's a sort of difficult narrative balancing act.
It's just a fascinating story about how paranoia gets created and spreads.
And how quickly, how contagious it seems to be, in fact, yes.
All right, Stacy Schiff, thank you so much. The book, The Witches, Salem 1692, is available now.